Now this was a challenging case study because the location of the landscape in this watercolor was initially completely unknown. And it was a small building sitting on top of a cliff in the far distance that was the key to identifying the location. A building that could have easily been overlooked. This case study is of a watercolor by John Cotman titled The Anglers and dated about 1829 to 1830. Initially we had no idea where this location is, so I thought I'd look for other objects, other drawings or paintings by Cotman that he did over the same time period to see if they might indicate where he was at that time. I found this watercolor online. It's in the collection of the Indianapolis Museum of Art. It's by Cotman, titled Blasting St. Vincent's Rock, Clifton, dated about 1830. Clifton is in the southwest part of England. The river you're looking at is the river Avon, and the valley you're looking at is called Avon Gorge. Now pictured in both watercolors is a cliff, is water, and even similar looking sailboats. But this is not enough evidence to prove they are the same location. However, on the watercolor on the right, at the top of the cliff, is a building, and this building is unique to this location. And interestingly, the same building is seen on top of the cliff in the watercolor on the left. Around 1830, John Cotman was in Avon Gorge along the Avon River sketching landscapes, including these two watercolors. Now I'm going to show you what that building is at the top of the cliff. The building is called St. Vincent's Observatory. And what you can see if you look at the river below is that it's dry. Yet in both watercolors it was full of water. The Avon River has an interesting characteristic. It dries to a muddy channel at low tide, yet can be navigated by seagoing ships at high tide. And apparently the river was full when Cotman sketched this landscape. But where exactly was he? Because there are steep hills on the opposite bank of the river and very little room between the river bank and those hills. And the cliff in the watercolor seems to be quite a distance from the artist. So I decided to calculate this distance between the artist and the cliff in the watercolor using a technique that is somewhat different than the one that I used in both the watercolors by Cox and by DeWint. And this is because there's only one object that I'm measuring the distance to, and that is the cliff. To do this, I had to make two reasonable assumptions. The first is that the height of the angler in red from river level to the top of his head is 6 feet, and that he is between 15 and 30 feet from the artist. I also know that the height of the cliff at the point beneath the observatory is about 300 feet. I measured that using Google Earth. Though it's coincidental, the arrow representing the height of the cliff and the arrow representing the height of the angler are identical lengths. And this means that if the height of the cliff is 50 times the height of the angler, then the distance to the cliff is 50 times the distance to the angler. So the calculated distance between the artist and the cliff in the watercolor is somewhere between 750 and 1,500 feet. This is a Google Earth image looking directly down at the river. The cliff is in the upper right, and the artist's location is somewhere within that area that is outlined in white, because this area is within this range of distances that we calculated, and it is also at an elevation that is about the same as the river level when full. And notice that the entrance to Nightingale Valley is not within this region because it is only about 600 feet from the cliff. And this is the one location within that region where the Google Earth image of the cliff aligns best with what we see in the watercolor. And this location is close to the railroad tracks, about 1,200 feet from the cliff. The image on the right is what the artist would have seen from this location, and notice that the cliff isn't just flat. The rocks appear to be dipping from upper left to lower right, and there's some shape to them, some character to the cliff. And now I'm going to fade in the watercolor, and notice that I've outlined the face of the cliff, and also notice that the face of the cliff has some character to it, some features on it that I've also outlined. And now as I fade out the watercolor, notice how well these features align with what we see in the Google Earth image, with one exception, and that's the observatory on top of the cliff. But I felt it was more important to align both images based on the shape and the character of the cliff face than to align them based on the location of the observatory, because I felt the artist could have placed that observatory anywhere on top of the cliff. So I think we can say with some degree of confidence that Johnsville Cotman was within Avon Gorge, along the Avon River, quite likely within that region that we outlined in white, and quite possibly at this location about 1,200 feet from the cliff when he sketched this watercolor titled The Anglers.